Welcome back. It is Sunday. All the days are the same now, aren't they? There's no difference. The virtual class is Sunday, 8 o'clock in the evening, right when Ed Sullivan's coming on. For those of you who don't know Ed Sullivan, take my TV class. It was a show that changed the world. Introduced Elvis Presley, introduced the Beatles, and many, many, much more. And families gathered around that little TV to watch this every night Sunday. You grew up that way before we had too many channels, too much opportunity. Anyway, hope you all staying safe and doing good and not letting this little pandemic get you down. What's a little pandemic? This is movies. Movies will survive. Movies will keep moving. I just read a great book about a great iconic 70s movie called Chinatown. It's called The Big Goodbye. And it just came out this year. Really, really excellent book. You saw a little bit of the Chinatown stuff in that documentary. Maybe you've heard of Chinatown with Jack Nicholson. Seek it out. Look at it. If you want to write a paper about it, please do. But you have to watch it first. Just let me know, okay? Anyway, before I get on with the 1980s, what I call the doldrums of Hollywood cinema, or when the blockbuster B movie took over anything that was challenging or smart, and the end of the auteur directors. The door is closed now, folks. Those guys are gone. They're still making a living, but now they're following the rules like everybody else. And the whole landscape of Hollywood is changing now in the 80s. If you grew up in the 80s, that's your favorite era. We usually, when we're growing up in our formative years, that might turn into your go-to era for films that affected you, nostalgic wise or reality wise or not. And so the 80s, the big blockbusters of the 80s would be Top Gun, which they just made a new sequel. Tom Cruise is still flying that jet like he's 20 years old, except for he's pushing 60. And Val Kilmer is now an admiral. And, you know, he had horrible throat, tongue cancer. And he's a shadow of his former self, but he's surviving. They all come back. One more go around as cocky naval pilots. Maybe you love Top Gun. That's okay. A lot of people did. It was a huge hit, along with movies like Gremlins and Goonies. These were coming out of the Hollywood studios and endless sequels like that documentary. Hopefully you watched that we had the quiz about, informed you. But now we've got Star Wars sequels. We got Superman sequels. We got Rocky sequels. Sequels became a huge industry and a safety zone. And I'll talk about sequels in more depth. I'll have a whole lecture about sequels. The nature of sequels is familiarity. People don't want to hear a new story. They don't want to see anything change much. Little changes, not much. Look at the endless sequels right now. I just saw one. Speaking of which, yes, I'm keeping up with cinema, folks, on Netflix. And recently I watched, I think I mentioned two I highly recommend. One was the South Korean film that won the Academy Award called Parasite. Really hip, smart, scary, funny movie from South Korea. Check it out. And about a family of people who are struggling to make two, and they kind of ingratiate themselves into a wealthy family, and like a parasite will do, and how they destroy everything. They destroy that family, their family. in an iconic way. It's almost saying the story is don't leave your class, stay underground, don't go and try to better yourself because disaster will strike. Or if you too try to better yourself, do it honestly. That's probably the moral of the story, I'm sure. Then the movie I saw, which is another foreign film, maybe I said this on another lecture. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. If I was in class right now, one of you would point this out to me. That's what I depend on a live audience for, pointing my flaws out to me. This one was called, shit, I already forgot. Ah, that's weird. Pain and Glory. Did I say that already? The Spanish film by Pedro Almodovar. I think I did. I did talk about this. Antonio Banderas is great in it. He plays a filmmaker who has lost his creative edge, and very much sort of an updating version of 8.5 by the great Federico Fellini. But in the meantime, what did I just watch this week? Because I need to see some of these sequels you're all so in love with. So I saw the new John Wick sequel with Keanu Reeves, and literally the less Keanu speaks, the better it is. He even knows that now because you watch these movies, he barely utters 2 words. Thank you very much. I think he's getting a little long in the tooth. I think he's 58 or so, and he's this action guy in the suit walking around with his dour expression on his face, and there's more off the hook shooting in this thing. It is 2.5 hours of shooting guns into people's heads in a very clever way, very entertaining way. We've made killing more entertaining than we could ever imagine. There's no romance in these things. There's no sex in these things. But man, there's a lot of guys shooting bullets into other people's heads and making it look really cool. Have the trend in so many sequels now is everybody is an assassin. Did you ever know there were so many trained assassins out there? According to these movies and a lot of TV series, and we'll talk about that later, is everybody's a professional assassin, as if that's really a career that is actually not just a Hollywood makeup thing, you know? So before you want to go out there and be an assassin like Keanu Reeves and look cool doing it, you've got to be a ninja, and you've got to be a cold-blooded killer and not have a private life. Although John Wick was very upset when his dog was injured because he likes dogs, and that's his humanity, the fact that he likes dogs. What was the other one I saw? And it was equally as ludicrous. Sorry, folks, ludicrous. Look it up, the word. It's a cross between it's impossible and ridiculous. It doesn't exist. It's ludicrous. It's okay. What was the other one? And it was a big popular hit. I had to see it for myself. I'm going to forget what it was. I should write this stuff down. I'll figure it out in a minute. Anyway, I saw 2 of these big action things. I was actually laughing at some of the scenes in John Wick. It was so over the top. It was comical. Maybe that's the effect they're going for. I don't think so. Because I watched the little documentary in the making of it. They take it so serious. They're all so into the zen of killing people in the karate fighting. That just means everything to them. Everything. So I don't think they're doing it with tongue in cheek. I know they aren't. And it made a boatload of money, and so they're making another one already. If you watch the film, each film, if you've seen them, ends, and the next film picks up right at that scene where it ends. And so this next one, his body survives all this, I have no idea. How can you fall off a building and get up and walk away? And he's got bruises, he's cut up, no broken bones. I don't know how many times he gets shot he's got a suit, a bulletproof suit. But he's not a superhero, folks. He is a human being. Anyway, I'm talking too much about this, but the sequel pickup is going to pick up he and another guy who are down and out, have been brutalized. They've killed 4,000 people, but they haven't won yet. They're going to come back because they're going to get payback. Sequel, I already read where it's scheduled to be released 2021. So Keanu Reeves will. It's very much like the Terminator. You can't put this guy down. Oh, that's what it was. I did see the new Terminator also. Just more of the same, trying to put a Terminator down who was so determined that and each time they come into another Terminator who cannot be defeated. What was the other one? Forgetting what it was. But anyway, I'll get back to it. So that's what Hollywood is churning out, where Europe and Asia, South America is cranking out more human films, more films of meaning and substance. Speaking of which, I want to talk briefly about the 80s. And we came out of the 70s, Vietnam War. What's going on in the world? Lots. Vietnam War is finally over. The counterculture is under the radar. Failed. No more hippies. Disco starts. But during the late 70s, there was a movement in rock and roll called punk. And punk kind of blew disco out of the water a bit. Thank you very much. And maybe you've heard of these bands, from Patti Smith to Talking Heads to Television, Sex Pistols, The Clash, the X out in LA. So the music was pushing back at the status quo. The big bloated musical disco was happening. But what was also happening, we have a new president, Ronald Reagan, and he was a former movie star. I put that in quotations because he was known for doing a series of movies with a chimpanzee. Bonzo. Bonzo goes to college. Bonzo goes to work. And believe it or not, Ronald Reagan wasn't the chimp. There was an actual chimp in it. And he was the keeper of the chimp. Anyway, that was Ronald Reagan's acting claim to fame. Bonzo movies. He did some others, yes, and he was on television. But he becomes the president in the time where there's a shift in the world. We had come out of a crisis in Iran. This is what's going on in the culture, so it's important to connect the dots. And Jimmy Carter was our president, and hostages have been taken in Iran. Yes, Iran's been playing with us for years. We play with them. They go back and forth. It has to stop in your lifetime, and it started about halfway through my lifetime. So, and Jimmy Carter was not considered the macho, take charge, military type president. He wanted to think things through, and people were upset over his leadership. Although I'll say this for him, nobody died on his watch. He got the hostages out alive. But we wanted a new president, a cowboy, and Ronald Reagan played cowboys on TV. He had a ranch in Santa Barbara. He wore booties and a little cowboy hat. He was handsome, like a B-movie television actor, which is what he was. He had been to cover California, because Californians, we love our actors as governors. Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't our first actor. Yes, folks, the Terminator was the governor of California, as was Bonzo Goes to College. Bonzo's best friend was our governor also. Anyway, so we have love Hollywood washed up actors being our governors. So be that as it may, Ronald Reagan came in. He's going to take charge. His wife Nancy got on her thing. All the first wives usually have to get a project. It's usually feeding starving children or something. And her thing was just say no to drugs, and that was her big thing. Just say no. Did you know it was that easy, folks? Just say no. When someone offers you uh, the coke or the methamphetamines or even a hit off a joint, just say no. It's as simple as that. Um, no biggie. What's your problem? That was her big mission in life, and the rise of Wall Street. And this is important because the hippie dreamers that wanted to start communes and get back to nature now wanted to make money hand over fist. That became the new culture, and Wall Street was where you go to do it. And so the term yuppies came up, young urban professionals. Everybody was going to cutting their hippie hair, getting rid of their love beads, and forgetting these art films and going to Wall Street to make money, man. And it became the decade of excess. And if you ever want to see a great movie called well, there's Wall Street. That's a really good movie with. I'll talk about that later. Oliver Stone made, but I can't drawing a blank now. What the movie Scorsese made about 3 years ago? Drawing a blank on the title. You all know what it was. Leonardo DiCaprio played the real Wall Street guys. It was a fantastic movie, and it really showed you guys are making so much money and they're drugging and sexing and just living the life. Supposedly, we all want to lead, evidently. And it was called something at Wall Street. Why am I drawing a blank? Who's usually sitting right here and would correct me? The Wolf of Wall Street. Excellent, excellent. That'll show you exactly what was going on in this era that I'm talking about right now. And so Hollywood, what do? They want to make money just like Wall Street. Forget about films that have any sort of resonance or meaning. They want to make money. And the people who took over the studios were not film lovers or film people. They were cinema. They were businessmen, and they knew they had MBAs, and they knew more about how to make money supposedly. And so, how do they make money? You give the people fast, expensive entertainment to get their dollars. And also during the 80s, this was the rise of the Cineplex. They cannot build more movie theaters in one building. Now, instead of having 2 or 3 theaters, they have to have 10. Now we have 20 sometimes in these Cineplexes. And you build these things and you show all these sequels, and people will lay down their hard-earned dollars for it. And as soon as you walk out of the movie theater, you completely forget about it. In the early days of cinema, especially in the 60s and 70s, people talked about the movies for weeks on end. You'd see a movie like 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's a mind-boggling movie, and so you would talk about it with your friends. You see a movie like Clockwork Orange or Five Easy Pieces, and it meant something to you. There's some levels of deeper meaning that everybody is searching for. You don't necessarily get it. You don't get all the endings of all these movies because the filmmakers were not handing it to you on a silver platter. Anyway, but that's no longer truth. They're going to hand it to everything. You're not going to be baffled. You're going to be entertained. Entertainment. And that's okay sometimes. It's fine. But a steady diet of entertainment is like, no offense to anybody who eats at McDonald's every day, a steady diet of McDonald's. Yes, you can live on it. You might get hardening of the arteries and die young because of the food you're eating, but you'll enjoy it, I guess. But it's not nutritious, and I'm all about nutritious cinema. And so the films I'm going to recommend that you guys look at, and you're going to write an essay about this week, and I will list these movies on the assignments. If you can't find them, you should be able to find one. I'm going to give you about 6 to watch here so you can find them somewhere. They're on Hulu, they're on Amazon, they're on Netflix. I know a couple of these right now because I saw them. Stranger in Paradise is on YouTube. And watch one of these movies, somehow get one of these movies, and maybe you've seen them already, but you need to watch it and write a critical, analytical essay like your other essays. You know what I'm talking about. You're not going to give me a thumbs up or thumbs down review. You're going to actually analyze why it is the way it is. Does it work? Does it not work? What are the themes? What is the director trying to accomplish? What is the script doing? Are the performers giving you what they want? Are you getting the story? Do you care? But it's more of analyzing the material like you would anything they analyze. Not a whether you like it or not, but whether it has you're getting the themes and the meanings of the film. Okay, that's all I'm about here in this class. Are you understanding what the filmmakers are going about doing here? And so these films that were peeking through in the 80s, there was a few of them. They were really, it's the raising of the head of independent film that really took over in the 90s, which I'll do that later, with the film festivals such as Sundance, etc., became such an important game changer that these movies here were not changing the game, but they were making inroads to changing the game, because it's hard to change the game when the game is making so much money. And people go, do we want change? Well, hardcore cinephiles like yourself maybe want something more than the part 4 of Goonies or part 3 of Superman, which came out at that time. So maybe you want something more. And so I'm going to give you some ones to look at that had some more. One of them was called, it came out in 1981, I believe, and it changed a lot of the landscape for independent filmmakers. It's called Stranger in Paradise by Jim Jarmusch. He's still making films. He just made a film recently that I haven't seen, but I have it on my queue about zombies with Bill Murray. So he's still making films. He's a guy who's my age. He's a hipster happening guy. And he's made some really groovy films over the years. This is the one that put him on the map. He made it for very low money, 60 grand about. Nobody gets paid. He got film stock from another filmmaker, meaning it was given to him. Shot a 16mm black and white, and put on his music, which he loves, which is usually Howlin' Wolf or somebody of that ilk. And it turned into kind of a hipster classic. It's not much goes on. It's just about 3 people going on a road trip. But you get to see what the 80s look like in the world. And the dialogue is dry and ironic, I guess you could say. It's not tricky cinema, no tricky camera work. The camera mostly just stares at them from a medium distance. But it got into the movie theaters. When I lived in LA, this actually played at a Beverly Hills cinema. I went to see it. How it got in there, I have no idea, because it was playing right alongside, some Rocky Part 4 or whatever, and these entertaining blockbuster movies, and it was playing in this little multi-cinemaplex out in Beverly Hills. And, I loved it. Of course, I'm drawn to it like a moth to a light bulb if I think it's going to be something meaningful and of substance. So that's one you can look at. I'll write all the stuff down in this assignment so you don't have to memorize it. Think about it right now. Another one that came out around the same time is John Sayles' Return of the Secaucus 7 that he made for about $60,000, $70,000 with his friends. It's kind of, if you've seen The Big Chill, it's kind of a Big Chill type of movie. These people all went to college together, all gather. They're the Secaucus 7, which was they did a radical political movement in their college, and now they're getting together. This is them like 10 years later, and they're all meeting and reminiscing about their lives. Where did they have meaning in their lives? Are they let down? Anyway, smart script, and John Sayles went on to have a pretty good independent film career. Uh, there's a documentary I wish maybe I'll have you watch next week, and John Sayles is interviewed in it a lot. And he hasn't made a movie in a while, but he's made some very, really smart, meaningful films over the years, still out there. He and his wife. And that's one you can look for. Return to Secaucus 7. David Lynch is another one. He had his early film was called Eraserhead. It put him on the map. And then later on, after that, he did a big blockbuster movie called The Elephant Man by Studios. Mel Brooks, of all things, was a producer. And they got him to do The Elephant Man. Maybe you've seen it. It's in black and white. In the 1800s, he had this horrible disease that he died early of, suffocated early. And they call him Elephant Man because he didn't look like an elephant, folks, but that's what they said he looked like. He had a freakish disease, bone and skin disease. And then they made a mistake of giving David Lynch the reins on Dune, science fiction movie, one of the great science fiction books of all time. If you haven't read it, I suggest you do. It'll blow your mind. And but the film was a disaster. He was the wrong guy. The right guy for it was Alejandro Jodorowsky, who had planned it, was designing it, but he's just not considered Hollywood commercial, so they wouldn't let him do it. He should have done it. But there's a great documentary on Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Making of Dune. You should check it out. Find it somewhere. And it shows what a cool film he had in mind. Not the silly, campy thing that Lynch did. It was just a Hollywood debacle, filmed on a big set. And, Sting is in it. Your favorite Sting is actually in it. And okay, Tom McLaughlin, who went on to do this movie I'm going to recommend you watch, Blue Velvet. David Lynch got back to what he should have been doing, making offbeat, weird, nightmarish, dreamlike movies like Blue Velvet. He's still doing those kind of movies. He's the guy that directed and created Twin Peaks, maybe heard of it, television series. And he's still out there, still eccentric, still worth watching. And so Blue Velvet came out in '86. Dennis Hopper is from Easy Rider, is scary and brilliant. And the theme of that movie is pretty simple. You look at suburbia, you think everything's safe. Look closer, because it's not. And it's got beautiful, nice, eerie, dreamlike music. So Blue Velvet, another one that came out in '86, Spike Lee's film, She's Gotta Have It. Spike Lee is an African-American filmmaker who this movie put him on the map. He went on to direct Malcolm X with Denzel and Son of Sam, which is a great movie about the Son of Sam killer in New York City. And he's still making movies, and some of them are controversial. Maybe you've seen them. Spike Lee, who is around my age, he's out there. He's always controversial because he says what he needs to say. And he's the one, maybe you've read about him, who thinks Quentin Tarantino doesn't get the right to use the N-word. He hasn't earned that right, and Tarantino loves using it in all his movies. And Spike says, no, you don't get to use it. Oh, well, that's his opinion. I agree with it, but it's okay. Spike Lee, She's Gotta Have It. Check it out. Filmed on very little money. He went to NYU Film School. He still teaches there. He gives back to the community, and he mostly makes his money on Nike commercials. You could do really well on Nike commercials if you get the contract. And maybe you know him from always sitting ringside at the Knicks games, basketball games. He's always there with celebrities. Anyway, Spike Lee, check it out. Those are the movies you could check out. I will list these movies on the assignment. You're going to write your critical assignment. It'll be due this. I'll have it due next. You get 7 days to do it. Don't worry about it. Also, I'm going to give you a heads up. This is going to be your last critical essay, and then you're going to do a research paper. I'll talk about that the next lecture. The research paper is going to be about any element of cinema you choose to write about. Any film, director, genre, and it's a research paper, not a critical essay. It'll be 3 to 5 pages. It's going to be worth 20 points. So it's going to be worth more formal, critical research paper with a works cited sheet and the whole bit. I'll talk about it more later. That'll be due towards the end of the semester, which is coming up on us in about a little over a month. And then you'll have your journals, and that'll be it, folks. 3 more assignments. And but the last assignment is going to cover would have covered 2 other essays that we're not going to do, because I just don't have the ability to show these films in class right now. And so we're going to do we're improvising here. And so remember, you're going to do this essay, which you'll see it in the essay assignments that'll be on there tomorrow. And then you're going to do a research paper that you choose. But here's the deal. You're going to have to run the topic by me. Yes, you're going to have to contact me somehow through email or my cell phone and tell me what you're going to write about. I have to approve it. Because if you just want to write about your favorite movie, I'm probably going to say no. I want you to learn something. I want you to write about something that you find new discoveries. I'll talk about this paper more as we go along. And then your journals, hopefully you're keeping up on. Those won't be due till the last 2 weeks of school. But that's coming up in about a month. So be ready for it. So anyway, I finally finished all the essays for Sunset Boulevard. Not all the quizzes yet. I'm still in, and the ones I get to last are usually the email quizzes. They're in my email. I got to go back and find them. Have some patience. I'm getting there. Anyway, I hope everything's going well with you guys, as well as could be expected. Hopefully, you are all living large in your $1,200 checks. Ha 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 ha. And if you qualify for those, and that is it on the 80s. We'll talk more when I see you next. We'll probably start crashing into the 90s. Okay, we're getting there, folks. Anyway, keep watching movies. Keep the faith. Stay healthy. Keep scrubbing your hands. And I'll see you out there with your face mask soon. Adios.